Now, please welcome to the stage Jennifer Nye, Chief Creative and Marketing Officer of Momentum.
Hello, welcome. My name is Jennifer Nye. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of Momentum. I'm truly, truly honored to be introducing this discussion today. They're a remarkable trio. They're visionaries that are reinvigorating science, art, and the built environment. First, please meet Anastasija and Martin Lesjak. They're the powerful duo from 13 and 9 Design, who hopefully you've been hearing a lot about over the week. They're an internationally renowned, award-winning studio based in Austria, known for a deeply transdisciplinary approach. 13 and 9 operates at the intersection of architecture, interior design, product design, fashion design, sound, and research, earning global acclaim for creating work that is emotionally resonant as it is intellectually rigorous. Joining them, their long-term collaborator, Professor Dr. Richard Taylor, founder of Fractals Research and Dean of Physics at the University of Oregon. Dr. Taylor is a rare polymath. He holds degrees in physics, psychology, and art history. And for the past 25 years, he has been pioneering research on fractal-based systems that span from bionic vision to NASA applications. His work has revealed the profound impact that fractals can have on the human well-being. Their collaborative work has been celebrated in a huge way this week. Hopefully you all have heard they won the IIDA Award for Best in Show on Sunday night at Revel. They have been honored with 2 HIP Awards and 2 Best of NeoCon Awards this week, including Innovation and Business Impact. And today, you will all have the great pleasure to learn about this movement, a masterclass of sorts. And so we're going to discuss fractal art, architecture, and the power of nature. So thank you. Turn it over. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. So, hello everybody, also from my side. We're talking today about integrating fractal-based design for stress reduction into the built environment. And I have the pleasure to introduce you to the ScienceDesignLab. This is our label, how we are called. And the ScienceDesignLab spans over 3 continents with the psychologists in Sydney, Australia, the physicists in Oregon, in Eugene, and the creatives in Graz, Austria. And we in our studio, so we have 2 studios, a product design studio called 13 and 9, as mentioned, and an architecture business called InnoCAD. But we have an even more multidisciplinary team with architects, interior designers, product designers, sound designer, fashion designer, and we are very research-based. This is our headquarters in Graz that we built almost 20 years ago. And how it all began, about a decade ago, we started to integrate biophilic design in our projects. And after a while, we wanted to know more about it, besides putting plants into a space and using natural materials and all these things we know. We wanted to know what is behind. And started to do research, and always one name was coming up in scientific papers, and this was Dr. Richard Taylor. And one day, we started to read it, and especially for me, it was a little bit hard to understand, but then I told Anna I would so much love to talk to this guy. I think this would be amazing. And she, without telling me, wrote him an email saying, "Dear Professor Richard Taylor, we want to work with you. if you're interested, don't answer in between the next 3 weeks because we are on Christmas holidays. and he found it so hilarious and cool that immediately after 3 weeks he wrote back.
I got an email, yes.
Hello, Anastasia, I'm interested. And this was 8 years ago, and the rest is fractal design history.
It took me 8 years to bring this wonderful person and this amazing scientist here. And
so I can hand over to Anastasia.
Thank you, Martin, for a wonderful introduction. It's a huge pleasure to have you here, Richard. But before we talk about science behind biophilic design, I want to maybe you take a look to this project, which we finished like almost 10 years ago in Austria, a project where we implemented over 3,000 plants, natural materials, wood, stone, park, little river walks, acoustic features, ergonomic furniture, outdoor furniture. But this is probably a project which happens, I don't know, once in a while. And I was asking myself, can we learn out of biophilic design? And probably we will not always have solutions that can give us all these opportunities and all these ideas to be implemented. Can we work with other strategies? And most of the time, clients say, oh, why do I need biophilic design? Where are those places that are disconnected from nature? Or my employees can bring the plants in their offices and things like that. So I always like to start with a little education before we get briefing, because briefing, it's not only about executing layout. I also like to say, maybe we should think about how we live and work. We wake up and are in our spaces, our homes. We drive, we come to work, we are in the space. We are mobile, digitalized, urbanization is moving forward, and this is what impacts our behavior, how we live and work, but not only that, also our physiology and psychology. And we spend more than 90% of our time indoors. We have our phones. Research shows, REMAC research also showed that we have 10 hours on our phones, and this is happening day by day. And screen time is something that became so common in our life. We can't definitely work without it anymore. So I always like to introduce whole building design, which is very holistic for me, and I say there are certain strategies that we can implement in our built environment. It doesn't have to always be 3,000 plants or perfect lighting or acoustics. Perhaps there are certain ways to question the breathing and talk about biophilic design and the benefits behind. Always-on culture became very popular after the pandemics. We went home, but we took our devices with us, and we are reachable. This increased stress and increased burnouts in our society, and I think without prevention, and this can start with built environment, it will harm our quality of life, our individual state of well-being, but also to our society. And I read a lot of things that are happening lately, the papers that come from World Health Organization. Stress releases, health issues are very common. It's while we work, we are constantly under stress. It became kind of something that's going with us every day. It's just not this a moment stress. We have this cortisol stress, which I like to call permanent stress. It's just around us. It's like a shadow following us, and we are probably not so much aware about it. It's subconscious there, and it affects us on each level, body, mind, and our cognition. And some data showed that 50 up to 60% loss of working days relates to stress. And on individual side, which should be very important for us, but companies are starting to hearing all those numbers and data. And sometimes I like to say to client, look what's individual harm, but also think about what does this mean for society or for community, for people there where you work in. And I love to show this presentation. You don't have to study medicine to understand some things, but it's there, you know, mood, we know including anger, depression, lack of nature, loss of sleep, or hormone system changes, heart, blood pressure, our energy goes down. We have changes in our skin, all the chronic diseases, immune system disabilities shows up. And on the long term, our gut suffers. Leaky gut syndrome is also influenced by stress. Hormonal imbalances, especially by the young people. And on the long term, our bones and muscles, something that is maybe not so easy to heal. And why not prevention? Why not to think about it, and why not be part of prevention in the built environment? The other numbers, when we say social impact in the United States, we can see 300 billion annual cost to employees, to stress-related diseases, miss of work. 70% of people experience physical syndromes, but also psychical syndromes. And we definitely can say, oh, it's something that is just there. And probably there are ways, maybe not everything from biophilic design is possible to implement, but we can choose some things that we can do first. So in the upcoming month, we worked on a chapter in the handbook of neuroscience applied architecture. And I was so happy to hear that there is a group of designer, architects, scientists, neuropsychologists that work on the one publication, everybody bringing their own experience. And this might help also interior designers and architects to take some ideas or maybe some numbers and something that help them to bring the biophilic design in built environment. So my strongly statement is that interiors can help to promote health and well-being, and probably influence many things that we are not aware about. It's some small things that we think that they are, but they could have on the long term huge impact. Especially in the term of sensory design and personalization. So I like to say, see the space as an organism. It's not only functional layout. Maybe we can create also atmospherical layout, atmospherical soundscape, landscape, environments that have different qualities, stimulating, collaborative, reflective, or playful. One size don't fit all. Maybe we have ideas for neurodiversity, for different qualities that give different impacts and help people to have space where they can retreat, restore, enjoy the space, come home and say that was refreshing and not suffering for me. And I always quote to our clients and say, could we have being in the nature of space? They said, no, this is not possible. But then I try to give some numbers, give some layout, to send some research. Also, if you would like to have something, always reach to us. We can send you the papers that we work with. And I give always point on calming, refreshing, and restorative places, even if they said, oh, there's no space for that. Even in the surgery building, you can put a restorative place if there is a need for that. So one of the things, definitely noise. Most frequent trigger of stress is noise, urban noise. Office noise, people don't complete their work on time. They don't complete the quality of the work they want to have. It's about 65%. There's a study about it that claims about stress and how they impact the performance and the social connectivity. I had a case study where workers said, I'm a very connected person and I want to be engaged with my colleagues, but I'm stressed all the time. And it was related to the place that he was sitting. He had biggest impact of noise. And he moved to another place. The acoustic features have been done, and that was completely different. There is one thing also that I like to point, nature sounds. We are doing a lot of projects with sound design. My brother is sound designer, and we have a study also where recovery from the physiological and psychological stress could be up to 37%. This is a quite good number. Maybe there is a space for something that indicates nature sounds and bring nature sounds into it. Of course, the nature sounds in many of researchers show that they reduce cognitive fatigue and boost motivations as well. Light, my third big subject, dynamic or diffuse light, like you see in this project, could give this appearance of nature. It could help you to have different environments, the variations, the texture could be seen differently. Performing tasks could be done different, either you focus or in the communication or you restoring. They can also ensure safe navigation, which is also stress relieving. And of course, if it's possible to work with circadian lighting, I don't know how present this is in US, but we have some projects ongoing where we try to understand the rhythm of light through the day, how it affects our well-being, our melatonin, serotonin, or hormones that are important for us, because one lighting source might be too stressful for people if they spend really 10 hours in the built environment. There's also nice document about light, influence of light in the space by Browning publication, and maybe you would like to see something about it. But yes, biophilic design for stress reduction. Walking nature, could we create environment that is similar to this condition of walking nature? When your senses absorb sights, sounds, texture, smell, all the senses. And biophilia movement is not something quite new. I think it's been there since 80s, and you will, Richard, tell a little bit more about it. It's now the time where we are strongly discuss about effect of biophilia movement and why we need it due to all these factors I was saying before, and how we combine it with multisensory architecture. This lovely gentleman inspired me in so many ideas. We have chance to do some products together. And I like to have this quote here, a pioneer of fractal geometry of nature, Professor Mandelbrot quoted very nicely how greatly you contribute to fractal geometry and how your studies affect many different backgrounds, many different peoples, and I'm truly honored to have you here, and welcome to NeoCon. And
thank you, Anna, and thank you everybody for coming. Yes, so we've heard, all of us have heard the word biophilia, and as Anna has pointed out, it's actually been around for 50 years. And yet all of that effort leaves a vital puzzle unsolved, which is, what is it precisely about nature that promotes our health and well-being? And all of our experiments have been identifying a natural pattern called fractal that induces significant health benefits. So our goal is to quantify that relationship between these fractal patterns and nature's beauty so we can maximize those health benefits for everyone, all the way down from the youngest child to the oldest adult. So my journey on this mission started 25 years ago when NASA funded some of our experiments. And they were concerned about astronauts as they ventured into deep space and so separated themselves away from nature's scenery. So we built a mock-up space station and we put some fractal images in the background and found that it reduced the stress levels of the astronauts by 60%, which is a staggering amount for a non-pharmaceutical approach to stress reduction. So good news for the astronauts, but good news for the rest of us, because although we've not left the Earth, we have separated ourselves from nature's scenery. So since then, I've been conducting 25 years of experiments on follow-up studies, and we use all of that data to inform our fractal designs. Okay, so what is a fractal? Well, it's a weird-sounding name. Don't worry about that. It's a very simple principle. All that a fractal is a pattern that repeats itself as you zoom in at finer and finer magnifications. So this tree on the left-hand side is a great example. Now, this is referred to as an exact fractal because when you zoom in, exactly the same pattern repeats. If you mix in a bit of randomness into this process, it disrupts the exact repetition such that the patterns just look similar at different magnifications. And this example here on the right-hand side. So what's going on there is that the general qualities of the pattern are repeating, what we call the statistical qualities. So these are referred to as statistical fractals. So as we all know, there's a lot of randomness in nature. So what that means is that exact fractals are very rare. So fans of broccoli and cauliflower, you'll be delighted to know that those are exact fractals. But when you look out on a typical scene, those are statistical fractals. So examples, we've met trees, clouds, mountains, rivers, coastlines. They're so prevalent that they're referred to as the fingerprint of nature. They've also been appearing in artworks since the ancient Greeks. A couple of examples here. Salvador Dali from 1940, Mork Escher from 1959. Some artists have even managed to generate statistical fractals. So I study Jackson Pollock, that I know many of you will be familiar with, American artist from the 1950s who rolled his canvases across the floor and poured paint onto the canvas. Now, we've developed computer software that can look at the fractal quality of the images. And that software shows that Pollock's paintings are just as fractal as any scene. And you can see that here. It's quite hard to actually spot the Pollock. And it's actually this one. Now, the interesting thing is that whereas authentic Pollocks are fractal, fakes are not. So we can use that software to actually spot fakes. Now, that software then has to be accurate and reliable because it's dealing with $100 million decisions. But we use that same software to look at the fractal quality of the designs that we'll be talking about. So what is so special about fractals? Well, it's their visual complexity. All of those repeating patterns generate a very visually complex image for you. So even if you take an intricate building like this one, it's not got the same level of complexity of leaves on a tree. Even if you have a long and winding road, it's not as complex as the surrounding river system. Now, so fractals are fundamentally complex, but some are more complex than others. So we introduce a parameter called fractal dimension, and it's symbolized by D. And it charts the complexity on a scale between 1 and 2. So closer to 1, it's more simple. Closer to 2, it's more complex. And you can see a few examples here. So clouds in the sky are relatively simple and sparse. So they have a D value of 1.3. By the time you get to cracks in the mud, those are more complex, to 1.7. When you have branches in a very dense forest, that produces a very rich, intricate pattern, so 1.9 for those. What this software is actually doing is looking at the relative amount of fine patterns in that fractal mix. The more fine patterns, the more complex it looks, the higher the D value. So if you look at these clouds in the top left, they're relatively simple, so that will have a low D value. If the weather changes and the clouds generate that wispy shape, that's increased the amount of fine structure and the D value rises. Similarly, on the right-hand side, trees in the summer will have a low D value, but in the winter, when the leaves fall and reveal all of that fine patterning of the twigs, that will raise the D value. Okay, so what does the magic software do to calculate D? What it does is take a pattern, and this is a Jackson Pollock, there's the black paint on it, and it lays a mesh of identical squares on the image. And then we tell the computer to go and look at which squares are occupied by paint and which are empty. So by knowing which are occupied and which are empty, it can determine the pattern characteristics. Then we repeat that for a finer mesh, and that finer mesh is the equivalent in looking at a finer magnification. So we can keep on comparing the pattern characteristics at different magnifications and determine the D value. So let's say we take a typical scene and we apply that software to typical fractal objects. This shows the distribution and the prevalence of those objects. So you can see that there are objects with D values of 1 all the way up to 1.9. But the most prevalent fractals are the mid-complexity, the mid-D fractals, and that's key for our story. How do we respond to this visual complexity? Well, my day job is developing bionic eyes to cure blindness. So when you're attempting to replicate something as amazing as the eye, you have to learn a lot about it. And one of the most important things is what happens to your eye when you look out at nature. And it's absolutely incredible. So every second, your brain receives 2 billion pieces of information from your eyes. That data is flying down your optic nerves at speeds close to the speed of a bullet, 200 times faster than the fastest internet connection. So your brain is getting absolutely bombarded with information, and as a consequence, it takes up to 30% of its volume to process that data. So you might think that the brain is in danger of getting overwhelmed, but the good news is that the brain has been doing this for 600 million years. So during its evolution, it's always been surrounded by those fractals, and so it's developed what we call these fractal processing capabilities. So we call this the fractal fluency hypothesis, that you have become fluent in the visual language of fractals. And when you look at those fractals, it triggers a whole set of subconscious processes that start to unfold in milliseconds, so well before you're even consciously aware of what you're looking at. And this enhanced processing of these mid-D fractals occurs at multiple stages of your visual system. So if we think about the gateway of your visual system, the eye, when your eye moves, it actually traces out a fractal pattern. That's what it wants to do. So when you show the eye a fractal image, there's a resonance between what it wants to do and what it's being asked to do. And that opens up the floodgates, and the information pours through the eye to the brain. Then we can use MRI to chart which parts of the brain are getting activated. One of the big areas is the parahippocampal area, and that is involved in memory retrieval. So what's going on is as this image is getting assembled in your brain is checking in with your long-term memory and comparing it to fractal images that are already in your memory. Another region that gets activated is the default mode network. That is a network that gets activated during restful activities such as meditation and daydreaming. So there's an indication that the brain actually is enjoying this process. So all of these processes shift your brain into what we call a visual comfort zone. And that boosts your cognition, particularly for activities that involve pattern recognition and pattern memory. So your brain shifts into this comfort zone, and then it sends signals to the rest of your body to relax, and it uses something called the parasympathetic system. When that gets activated, it slows your heart rate, lowers your blood pressure, slows your breathing, reduces muscle tension, and a whole set of other activities associated with relaxation. We can chart that relaxation at multiple stages. So we use eye tracking to look at pupils, that when you relax, your pupils actually get smaller. We use EEG technology to look at your brain activity. There's a brain activity called alpha waves that peak when you're relaxed. And then we also measure your skin conductance to measure the change in your physiology. And that's what I want to emphasize, that when you look at these fractal patterns, your whole physical condition changes. So we refer to these stress-reducing fractals as biophilic fractals because they're responsible for some of the famous previous studies. So one study showed that when you look out at nature, patients recover far more quickly from major surgery. What's happening is the fractals are relaxing the whole of your body and promoting that recovery. Other famous biophilic experiments looked at boosting your mental capacities to prevent mental fatigue and career burnout. Those are what fractals can do for you. So you get these health benefits for free because you are all fractally fluent. But if you move into the built environment, that's a bit like you being transported to some far-off land where you're having to speak a foreign language that you don't understand. Even if you stay out there in nature, there's a clues that you won't always find those magic mid-D complexity patterns. We've just published a paper showing that in the winter, when the clouds change and the trees change, those mid-complexity fractals gradually diminish, and that might be creating seasonal depression for some people. So we could address seasonal depression by people coming into the interior environment where there's fractal patterns. More grim, we've published a paper showing that if we let climate change occur, those friends, those fractal friends that we've had for 600 million years will go away. And in that grim future, the only source of fractals will be the ones that we put in the built environment. The experiments show that this will work. So observation periods, less than 10 seconds to make this happen. You don't need to stare directly at the patterns. It's just environmental exposure. The positive effects will persist after you've stopped looking at them. And there's a lot of creative freedom. You can do lots of designs that will satisfy this mid-D complexity. When we move from the computer screen to the environment, we do adapt the patterns and we tune the D value. If you put a fractal pattern into a simple environment, that puts extra pressure on the fractal to deliver the fractal complexity, so we raise the D value. We also tune the D value based on what task is happening in that building. One of the amazing things and unique things about fractals is that they can both relax you and stimulate you at the same time. So this is my one scientific graph. I know you're going, yuck, a scientific graph, but it's actually quite a useful one. So let's talk through that. So if we look at that blue line, as the D value of the pattern increases, the fractal complexity goes up, and that stimulates you. It grabs your attention and engages you. The red line is the fractal fluency line, so that peaks at mid-D. That relaxes you and boosts your cognition. So you can see there's an array of patterns here from Mohawk and Momentum where we've got a spread of D values based on what task we want to target. So for example, in my life, these photos, if I was landing in a glider, I would want to be relaxed. I would want to have my cognition boost. I would want to be surrounded by mid-D fractals. If I'm bored and my friend has been late and I'm starting to get agitated and looking around, I'd want a high D value to kind of stimulate me and distract me. Then the last thing that we can accommodate by tuning D is neurodiversity. Now, when we start talking about differences, it's always good to start about what do we have in common. All humans have in common fractal fluency. We've all experienced that same 600 million year journey. What's interesting, though, is that we can accommodate slight differences by tuning D values. Our experiments show that the majority of people prefer mid-D, but there are some people who prefer lower, some prefer higher. Examples from the art world, Jackson Pollock preferred higher D. His contemporary Willem de Kooning preferred lower D. So I've taken you on a quick journey of 25 years showing you the power of fractals, but I want to emphasize what a thrill it is to work with Martin and Anna to combine that scientific data with an artistic vision to generate our biophilic fractal designs. And Martin's going to take over and show you exactly how we do that.
Thank you, Richard. Now we go more into the design stuff. So beginning with the design methods, we have actually two design methods, how we create our fractal patterns. The one is a computer-based, completely computer-based approach with a special software that we created together with Richard's team in Eugene. And we call it growing fractals. So what you see below this colorful, this tracking graphics is how, what Richard mentioned before, how your eyes looks at the space. For example, when you enter a space, you don't scan it like a computer. You look around in small distance, medium distances, far distances, instinctively. And this is the same pattern how an albatross would search for food in the Antarctica, or a bird on the beach. Everyone knows this. When they are searching in the sand for food, they don't go like this. They do around in little distances, then they run over here, search here, and then they fly a couple of meters and land there and start again with the small. And it's a self-similar pattern how you would look on a space. And this pattern we use as the basis in our software. It's called the Levy flight. Mm. And on each crossing, on each corner of this track, we plant a seed. Mm. And this you see here in the second image. So we plant a seed. We have to decide which seed do we want to grow. And then with the help of algorithms, we grow the seeds until we have the feeling it is aesthetically pleasing, it's what we want. And then we send it over to the fractal police in Eugene and hope that it will pass the test. But normally it doesn't, and we have to go back and forth a while. But at the end, we find a pattern that matches our expectations from a design perspective and passes the fractal police tests. And then we tune the D value, as Richard explained, where we want to have it. And here you see a comparison of the complexity of a low, mid, and high D value. Mm-hmm. The second design method is what we call morphing fractals. And this is also the method that we used for the renaturation collection for Momentum, which is actually on display in the showroom. And this is where we take natural patterns and then morph and abstract them and calibrate them to meet all the requirements from the aesthetical perspective, but also from the science perspective. And this, for example, this picture shows, this is actually from Richard's research on the bionic eye. These are neurons, a network of neurons that you see in the microscope. And we created a pattern out of this neurons structure that is also a product that we did for Mohawk, and what really directly relates to Richard's scientific research on a bionic eye. And this same method we used for the renaturation collection. And the whole concept of renaturation was inspired by this political discussion that is on, especially in the European Union. They just released a law that 50% of cultivated industrial or agricultural landscapes have to be converted back to nature, renaturated, which was a big discussion, as you can imagine. And there's a special project in the Switzerland that really inspired us to this whole collection, because it's similar what we want to do with the built environment. We want to renaturate it and put nature back in because of the necessities that we got explained in the last half hour. And when you look what happened, the river area starting on this image was a completely controlled river with concrete walls on both sides. And what they did is they carved, in this case, a very Euclidean geometric pattern, a rhomb shape, into the bed of the river. And then they let the water back in. And what happened over the years, you can see in this transformation. The river took over the natural flow and the natural network of the main parts and the smaller parts of the river and created a completely natural environment, a biotop that enhances all kinds of biodiversity. And this is really fantastic, this restoration power of nature. And this is the same what we want to introduce to the built environment, or what we already introduced. And this directly led to this one of the patterns of the renaturation collection in an application here. And this leads me over to show you real examples of our work, both in product design, but also in interior design and architectural applications that we were able to realize over the last couple of years. And this should also inspire you and show the power of fractal design, because it's both an aesthetical tool, but also a health and well-being tool that gives us as designers the chance to argue in a different way, because you create an added value with your design that makes the world a better place and is good for people. So this is really a big chance for all of us. And renaturation, here you see the full collection. We have 3 patterns. The river, as shown, the bark and the moss. And these fractals are all stress reductive, but in this special collection, we raised the D value slightly to have both, to have the stress reductive qualities, but also some stimulating qualities, to make it accessible for a wide range of people, also when you think of neurodiversity. It comes in colorways. We always get the question about colors. And interestingly, there's not such profound research about colors and the psychological effects and stress reduction than what we have with fractals over 25 years. But we know that we don't use super saturated colors, too high contrasts, and we try to avoid reds and yellows. So we do a lot of neutrals, but also greenish and blue are known as at least not to be stress enhancing. Yeah, this was the beautiful renaturation collection, and you are all invited to see it live at Momentum showroom. The whole product story began almost 7 years ago with Mohawk Group, and this was the first product, relaxing floors, that won all the awards, and is really everywhere out there. So we used it a lot, but we get always pictures from beautiful projects where the relaxing floor is on. A new product that is also on NeoCon and can be seen in the Mohawk showroom in Fulton Market is our first fractal stress reductive LVD collection called Connect D, also for healthcare projects. Also a new one that is already actually on in Mohawk at Fulton Market is the Fractal Findings, also won the HIP Award on Sunday. These are these 2 patterns. These are also morphing fractals, versus the Connect D is a computer-generated, a growing fractal. And Fractal Fluency is a lower price collection with fractals, with growing fractals, yes, that is available. And now we had wall and floor, and with ceiling we collaborate with FAC Design, it's a US company, are specialized in acoustic ceilings, and in this case we have these products with perforated stress-reductive fractals. This is the product design range, but we in InnoCAD architecture, we do interior design and exterior architecture, and we add the serial product applications. We always add some customized solutions, like for the OPEC fund headquarters in Vienna, we used fractals printed on glass film, as you can see here, in combination to relaxing floors. For example, on this picture, to create this stress-reductive environment. And another application of relaxing floor, I like this picture very much because you really see here how seamless it blends into other biophilic design solutions like natural plants and natural materials, and me, of course, in the background. In this case, we used a customized printed fractal pattern on a micro-perforated acoustic ceiling together with moving floors. And again, you see this supernatural environment it creates together with the right design language for the rest of the space and furniture. And also here in our, it's a very interesting project where we used really all biophilic design strategies that are possible, also how the space is laid out, and And this is our first real architectural application. We used a perforated fractal facade for a palliative care unit we built as an extension to a state hospital in Austria. And in addition to this, we have here a customized printed wallpaper with the neuron design that I showed you at the beginning. But the very special thing here is that due to the facade, it is also used as a shading canopy in front of the patient rooms. You have the play of shadow and light, fractal shadows and light that move slowly through the space. And this is what Richard calls dynamic fractals, and they seem to have the most positive impact, even more than static fractals as static applications. And this is such a beautiful space, and palliative care unit is not a very nice place because people go there in the last days of their life, and normally people don't want to go there because they know that it's the last journey. But the response what we get from the employees and the leading doctor in this space is that people don't want to go home. Because normally, they come there, they get their medication, and then they should end their life at home, and they don't want to go. They don't want to go home to die. And this is what, but because they feel so good there, and they invite all their relatives and try to stay as long, which changed completely the sense of this space. Yeah, and we get a lot of feedbacks like this from all our projects. This is something completely different. This is a bar and diner in Romania, in Bucharest, where we used then this idea of dynamic fractals with artificial lighting. And as you can see here, we have a perforated ceiling, a backlit, and this projects the fractal pattern all over the space on the bar and the communal tables. And this is a fine dining restaurant that changed then to a lively bar and later to a more club vibe with DJ. And this transition we do with light, but also with the performance of the fractals. So we put a little haze in later in the space so that you can also see the beams. And this transforms more and more with this fractal lighting to create a jungle-like feeling when it comes more to the clubby vibe. And then we with Kinix technology, we then let the downlights move to create an image like you would see in a forest when the the sun shines through the leaves and flow in the wind, and this is what we generate with this artificial fractal lighting in this space. But last but not least, maybe our masterpiece, our fractal design masterpiece that just won not only the institutional category at the IADA Awards, but also Best of Competition on Sunday. It's the Fractal Chapel in Graz. So it's a Anglican-led, but ecumene, I don't know the English word, so open for everybody, a chapel in middle of a huge surgery clinic that is newly built. The place where every second there's the decision between life and death, so a surrounding where stress reduction is really needed. And this is based on a very simple concept. So we have 4 elements for the design. The helix is a symbol of life, the fractals, light, and the material of wood. And what we did, it's a quite small space, but high ceiling, so 8 meters high, which is, like 25 feet or so. And we applied in this space a second skin, a fractal perforated skin in form of a helix, of a spiral. And then I have very simple furniture, seating elements, and we collaborated with a sculptor, a very famous sculptor, Austrian sculptor, who created the altar, which is the centerpiece of the space. And this is how the mid-D fractal patterns, in this case, are unfolded on the perforated screens. And you enter this space directly from the main lobby. When you come to this surgery clinic, you see the entrance, which is quite narrow, and then it opens up in the height and in the width to the heart of the chapel, which looks like this. And the very special thing is that you have 3 hours in the day when the sun shines in, because it's a huge complex where there are surrounding buildings. But in these 3 hours, you have this imagery when the light and shadow moves through the space with the natural sunlight and changes the atmosphere. Mm. And also the art piece, the altar, is actually fractal. It's a part of a 100-year-old fallen tree that he transformed into this piece. And then when the sun passes by, we add artificial lighting that is also dynamic, so it slowly moves around the space. And this is the moment when the natural light and the artificial light takes over. You can see it here. And then when the natural light is gone, you have only the artificial light, as you can see here, creating also amazing atmosphere. And this is when all is on, but in reality, it moves slowly through the space and creates a more natural atmosphere as it would be with the sunlight. Yeah, and also there are really moving and interesting stories about this space and how it was adapted from the employees that worked there, but also from the patients, but also from relatives that wait for results for their beloved. So I think it is really it's so small, but it has a massive impact on this hospital, that we know so far. Yeah, and this is also the end of my presentation. Maybe you want to say some more words, as already mentioned. We have more than 5 scientific publications only about our collaboration, the implication for the built environment. And the fractal design is really a really strong response in the recent months and years. These are only architectural publications about fractal design, and also from the award side, it's really recognized that it's something that is an added value to our work that we do, and we invite you to spread the word, integrate the applications that we have so far from the product side to your projects, but also if you're interested, if you want to customize something, you can get in contact with us. We have a library of more than 30 patterns that are scientifically tested that you could apply, like you saw it in as printed films or perforations of spaces. You would need a little guidance from us because you cannot just take it and put it. You need to take care about seam matching, about scaling and how they're manufacturing. But our vision is to set up something like a Fractal Design Academy, because you shouldn't be only able to use fractal design products. You should be creative in your own processes, also with customization. This is our future vision, that we together use this knowledge from science to make our business as a booster for a better world. Thank you.